Before the world was always on, before the silent, invisible convenience of fiber optics and Wi-Fi, there was a sound. It was a sound that an entire generation has now never even heard. And for the generation that did hear it, it was the sound of the future. It was a digital handshake, a technological symphony, and it was, objectively, awful. It was the sound of the dial-up modem. It was a ritual. You would sit down at the family computer, that chunky beige tower humming under the desk. You'd double-click that little blue E for Internet Explorer, or perhaps that iconic AOL triangle. And then you would wait. First, you'd hear the click of the relay, then the sound of the phone line itself being seized, a familiar dial tone, and then the dialing. Beep boop, beep boop, and then the scream. It was a chaotic, screeching digital negotiation, a high-pitched digital shriek, followed by a burst of static, followed by a series of beeps and boops. It was a digital argument between your computer and somewhere out there. It was the sound of two machines speaking a language we couldn't possibly understand, fighting to find a connection. And you would just sit there, your hands hovering over the keyboard, and listen. You would hope. And then, after 30 seconds that felt like an eternity, silence. A final click, and you were in. You were online. That sound, that awful, piercing digital scream, that was the sound of a door opening. It was the sound of a portal powering up. It was the sound of the frontier. For millions of Americans, the Internet wasn't the vast, chaotic, terrifying wilderness we know today. In the mid-90s, the Internet was a place. It was a clean, well-lit room. It was called AOL, America Online. It came to you in the mail, a CD-ROM or a floppy disk. 5 free hours, 50 free hours, 1,000 free hours. They were everywhere. They became coasters. They became frisbees. They were the velvet rope to the exclusive club. You'd slide that CD in, you'd install it, a process that took an hour, and you'd enter what we now call the walled garden. AOL wasn't a browser. It was a digital city. It had channels. It had a weather button. It had a news button. It had sports. It had people connection. It was safe. It was curated. It was easy. It was the Internet with training wheels. It was friendly, simple, and it held your hand. And of course, it had the 3 magic words. The 3 words that released more dopamine in the 1990s brain than any other phrase. You'd log on, that kish kish sound would finally finish, and a cheerful, disembodied male voice would announce, "You've got mail." That was everything. That was the entire point. That was the digital reward at the end of the dial-up maze. Someone, somewhere, had thought of you and sent you a message. It was a miracle. We weren't just exploring a network. We were connecting. And for a little while, AOL was the Internet. It was a friendly, simple, walled garden, and we had no idea what was raging on the other side of that wall. This new world wasn't free. Oh, the CDs were free. But the time was expensive. After your 1,000 free hours were up, which were usually good for 30 days, a cruel marketing trick, you started paying $2.95 an hour. Think about that. You'd manage your time online, you'd log on, you'd check your mail, you'd check the weather, and you'd log off. You'd log off fast because the meter was running. It was a digital taxi. You were paying for every single minute. But there was an even bigger price, a higher price, the real currency of the 1990s internet, the phone line. The dial-up modem was just a very, very fast telephone call. And when you were online, your house was offline. The phone line was busy. It was occupied for hours. This created the great domestic conflict of the 1990s. It was the sequel to the Landline war. It was the internet versus the phone call. You'd be 45 minutes into downloading one song. You're at 98%, and somewhere in the house, your mom picks up the kitchen phone to call your aunt. Click! And the connection died. The download died. The scream you would let out. I was online! The anger, the fury. It was a war for a single copper wire. That was the price of admission. And then we moved out of the walled garden. We found instant messaging, AOL Instant Messenger, AIM, ICQ, that little uh-oh sound. And this was our first digital identity. It wasn't Mark Smith 123. It was Skater Boy 1998. It was Lincoln Park Girl. It was a name that you chose. And you had the buddy list, a tiny vertical window that showed you who was there. The thrill of seeing your crush's name suddenly pop to the top. They're on! And the sounds, that little boop boop of a new message, that sound of a door opening and a door closing as your friends logged on and off. But the true art form was the away message. This was your status. This was your stage. This was your voice to the world. You would spend hours crafting the perfect away message before you walked away from the computer. It was never just away. It was a cryptic song lyric, usually from Dashboard Confessional or 9 Inch Nails. It was an inside joke. It was a vague, passive-aggressive complaint about your parents. It was your first tweet. It was your first blog. It was art. This was the real Wild West, not the walled garden of AOL. This was the saloon. This was the people connection. This was the chat room. A blank white screen with a list of names on the right. Skater Boy 1998, Cool Cat 21, NYC Fireman, and a waterfall of text scrolling impossibly fast. You would enter a room, rock music, philosophy, teens only, and you would just watch. And then you'd get a private message, a little boop, a new window from a stranger, and the 3 magic letters that defined an entire era of the internet. ASL, question mark, age, sex, location. The 3 pillars of digital identity. 19MCA, 17FNY. Were they lying? Absolutely. Everyone was lying. NYC Fireman was probably a 12-year-old in Ohio. Cool Cat 21 was probably a 45-year-old man. But it didn't matter. It was the thrill. It was the anonymity. It was the danger. You could be anyone. You could talk to anyone. It was a global masquerade ball, and it was terrifying and addictive and completely unregulated. It was the Wild West. And if the chat room was the saloon, then GeoCities was the homestead. This was the digital land rush. The promise was your own page, your own .com. Well, not really. It was geocities.com/area51/8842, a digital address, a neighborhood, and you would build it. With what? With pure willpower and HTML. Well, mostly just the GeoCities page builder. And it was gloriously ugly. Oh, it was so ugly. It was beautifully ugly. It was our ugly. The tiled backgrounds, remember? A repeating GIF of a brick wall or a star field. Text that was impossible to read. Bright yellow text on a white background. Text that blinked. Text that scrolled across the screen, the marquee tag. And GIFs, so many GIFs. The under construction GIF of a little man digging. The flaming horizontal rules, the spinning email icon, and the web ring, a little widget that connected your X-Files fan page to other X-Files fan pages. It was chaos. It was anarchy. It was pure, unfiltered self-expression. There was no template. There was no brand identity. It was just you shouting into the digital void, "Here I am. Look at my list of favorite bands." It was wonderful. So how did you find anything in this chaos? How did you navigate? Well, it wasn't easy. There was no Google, not at first. Google was a research project. We had the Titans. We had Alta Vista. We had Lycos. Go get it. We had Webcrawler, Hotbot, Excite, and my favorite, Ask Jeeves, a friendly digital butler who you could ask a question. When searching was an art, you didn't just Google it. You had to think. You had to use Boolean operators, Nirvana, and not Buddhism. You had to work for your information. And the results? They were terrible. You'd search for best pizza near me, and you'd get a link to a college kid's GeoCities page about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It was a mess. You had to sift. You had to dig. Finding information wasn't instant. It was a treasure hunt. And then, in 1999, a college kid named Sean Fanning created Napster. And the world broke. The entire world broke. It was a simple idea. What if we just shared our MP3s? Not from a central server, but from each other's computers, peer to peer. And suddenly, every song ever recorded was free. Every single song. The entire music industry. The Beatles, Metallica, Metallica, we'll get to them. Dr. Dre, everything, free. You'd type in a song name, "Smells Like Teen Spirit," and a list would appear. A list of strangers all over the world who had that song. You'd look for the one with the fastest connection. A T1 line? What was that? It was magic. You'd click download, and you'd wait. And wait. You'd watch that little blue bar crawl across the screen. 27 minutes remaining. And you'd pray. You'd pray that your mom didn't pick up the phone. You'd pray that the other person didn't log off. And when it was done, you'd double-click it. Winamp, it really whips the llama's ass, would open and the song would play. A song you didn't pay for. It felt like stealing. It felt like magic. It was a revolution.
This was a world before YouTube. There was no central place for videos. So how did we share culture? We did it manually. We shared flash videos, those .swf files. A friend would email you a file. Dude, you have to see this. You'd open it, and it would be hamster dance. Dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. 100 dancing hamsters on a loop. It was stupid. It was pointless. It was mesmerizing, and everyone saw it. Or, all your base are belong to us. A terrible translation from a video game set to a techno beat. Or, badger, 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 mushroom, mushroom. This was our viral culture. It was weird. It was niche. It spread slowly, not in an hour, but over months, hand to hand, email to email, a digital folklore. And it all felt like a party, a digital gold rush. Everyone was going to be a millionaire. The stock market was on fire. All you needed was a .com at the end of your name. Pets.com, Webvan, e-toys. Money was free. Optimism was infinite. It was the new economy. It could never fail. And then, in March of 2000, it failed. It didn't just fail. It imploded. The bubble burst. All that optimism, all that money, it vanished. Pets.com, gone. Webvan, gone. The NASDAQ crashed. It was our first great hangover. The Wild West party was over. The gold rush had ended, and a lot of people were left with nothing but a sock puppet. After the crash, the internet got quiet for a little while. The get-rich-quick crowd was gone, and the people who were left, the engineers and the builders, started creating something different. This was the birth of Web 2.0. It was a new buzzword, but it meant something important. It meant the internet wasn't just something you read, like a static GeoCities page. It was something you wrote to. It was interactive. Google rose from the ashes of the crash, and it was different from Alta Vista or Lycos. It was clean. It was just a white page with a search bar. It was fast, and most importantly, it worked. It didn't just give you links, it gave you the right answer. And then came Friendster, and more importantly, MySpace. The social web was born. The entire shift of the internet was happening. It was no longer about finding information. It was about sharing ourselves. Google didn't just work by magic. It worked with an algorithm, PageRank. It didn't just find links, it judged them. It ranked them. It decided, using math, what was important. And this was the end of the ugly web. This was the death of GeoCities. Because Google hated those sites. Its algorithm couldn't read them. It saw the blinking text and the tiled backgrounds as junk. And so, it buried them. The web became clean. It became corporate. It became professional. The Wild West was being paved. The chaotic, colorful frontier was being bulldozed and turned into a clean, efficient suburb, with rules. And Google was the city planner. And then, in 2004, the final nail in the coffin of the Wild West. A college kid at Harvard created a site, the Facebook, and it had one terrifying rule: your real name. You had to use your real identity. This was the end of anonymity. This was the death of Skater Boy 1998. The global masquerade ball was over. The masks came off. The internet was no longer a fantasy world you visited for a few hours. It became a mirror of the real world. It became your resume. It became your personal brand. And that changed everything. The frontier was closed. The saloon had been replaced by a bank.
Now, let's be honest. Just like the real Wild West, it wasn't all great. Our nostalgia is a liar. It's a filter. It conveniently forgets the bad stuff. It forgets the slowness, the sheer agony of waiting 5 minutes for one picture to load, line by agonizing line. It forgets the pop-up ads. Oh my God, the pop-up ads. You'd click one link and 20 new windows would explode on your screen. You've won $1 million. Your computer is infected. You'd spend the next 2 minutes just trying to close them all. It forgets the viruses, the worms, the I love you virus that destroyed your address book, Bonzi Buddy, that stupid purple ape who wouldn't go away. It forgets the frustration, trying to dial up 10 times in a row and getting a busy signal every single time. It was a difficult and often terrible place to live. So, we won't go back. Of course we won't. We love our clean, fast, fiber optic world. We love our instant answers from Google. We love our YouTube. But when we look back at that chaotic, ugly, screeching world of the 90s internet, what are we really nostalgic for? What did we lose when the West was won? We didn't just lose the ugly gifts. We lost anonymity. We lost the freedom to be someone else, to try on a new identity without consequence. We lost the frontier, the feeling that not everything had been discovered, the feeling that you could build a little digital homestead that was all yours, and maybe, just maybe, someone would stumble upon it. And maybe, most of all, we lost the separation, the hard line between online and offline. You had to try to get online. It was a decision. It was a place you went. And when you were done, you left. You disconnected. You hung up. And you were back in the real world. Now, there is no separation. There is no offline. We just live inside the machine.